All right, hello everyone. This will be week 8 monetary policy and bonds. We're also going to talk generally about a little bit about the money market. To really grasp these concepts, you're going to want to make sure to solve problems and work hands-on with these types of situations. And you're just going to have to keep practicing and trying to grasp these concepts. So definitions-wise, we have interest rate. This is the cost/price of holding money. When we're talking about interest rate, we're talking about how if I put $10 in the bank, in a year, it's going to give me 0.001% interest. So if I have $100, then it's going to give me like a couple pennies. But if I put $1 million inside the bank and the interest rate is still 0.01, then I can get a lot more money. Either way, when the interest rate is increased, it costs a lot more to hold like cash because I'm losing out on the interest income if I were to put it in the bank instead. Next up, when we talk about money in this case, we're just talking about liquid money. Liquid money is just anything that I can immediately spend. So this is cash and checking accounts and things like that. Credit cards are not liquid money because they're short-term loans instead. When we're talking about interest rate, when the interest rate R increases, the planned investment and autonomous consumption decreases. So you can think about it like this. Planned investment would be things like, houses and things like that. And autonomous consumption would be things like big ticket items. So planned investment would cars and things like that. And so the interest rate increases, the cost of borrowing that money to pay to buy these items becomes a lot more expensive. So in general, when the interest rate increases, people spend less. And the opposite is true. If the interest rate decreases, this IP and AC, they both increase. So let's talk about the money market a little bit. You notice that we'll have price of money on the R, and then M1, which stands for liquid money, on the x-axis. We first off have our money demand. So you notice that it's downward sloping. So money demand, MD, is money demand M1 money. And so as the price increases, we're talking about the price level. In this case, we're not talking about the price of money. If I were to talk about the price of money, we're going to say price of money. But this time we're talking about price. This is the price level of goods in the economy. So in general, if let's say the only thing I want to buy is a chocolate bar. If the chocolate bar is $1, I'm going to need $1 of liquid money. But if the chocolate bar is $2, I'm going to need $2. So just in general, as the price level increases, the money demand increases. Next up, as the income/wealth increases, the money demand also increases. So wealth, income, job security, things like that. So money demand, as I have more money, I would like to spend more money. Next, we have the straight line here. This is the money supply. This is set by the Fed and is completely inelastic. So no matter what the interest rate is, the money supply will always be this constant amount. So if it's 14 trillion, it's just 14 trillion throughout. Okay, monetary policy involves two parties, the Federal Reserve and the public being us. And when we're talking about buying and selling bonds, we're talking about how the Fed is buying or selling bonds. So the first thing they can do is they can sell bonds. So the Federal Reserve is going to sell bonds to the public. So in this case, if they sell bonds to the public is buying these bonds off the Federal Reserve. So the Federal Reserve is selling these bonds. So money is leaving the public and entering the Federal Reserve. Because when you sell stuff, you give money to one party. So the Fed is giving public bonds and the public is pulling out money from the public. Next, they can buy bonds from the public. So if the Federal Reserve buys bonds from the public, the money supply increases because bonds go into the Fed and then money supply leaves the Fed. So it's kind of this opposite. If you sell bonds, money supply decreases, and if you buy bonds, money supply increases. So sell, money supply decrease, buy, money supply increases. Let's talk about expansionary monetary policy. You'll see we have this graph here. Red dot is where we are, this interest rate R. So this is used when Y is less than Y bar. So when we're talking about under full employment, we talked about this last week, what we should do when we're not in full employment. So ultimately, in the end, this is open market purchases. And open market purchases is when we buy bonds. We buy bonds, we increase the money supply. It shifts to the right. And notice we have a new equilibrium. So this green dot here, this interest rate is a lot lower from where we are. So R decreases, and then the planned investment and autonomous consumption increases. So that means that the aggregate expenditure overall increases, which means Y increases to Y bar. We're going to assume that when we change this money supply, we're targeting a certain level that we know will get us back to Y bar. But ultimately, the idea is whether we're increasing money supply or decreasing money supply. If we increase the money supply, you notice that the interest rate has gone down. Contractionary monetary policy, on the other hand, we start off with the red here. This is used when Y is greater than Y bar, so we're over full employment. This means that we're going to do open market sales. We sell bonds, so we decrease the money supply. And so the money supply moves to the left. The green dot moves up here. So you notice that the interest rate increases from the red to the green. And that means that the planned investment and autonomous consumption decreases, meaning that overall aggregate expenditure decreases and Y decreases to Y bar. So once again, just notice that money supply decreases, interest rate increases. All right, so that's going to be all for this week's video. Ultimately, in the end, it's very similar to fiscal policy, except that instead of directly targeting aggregate expenditures, we're targeting interest rate, which affects the aggregate expenditures, which then affects Y bar. All right, if there's any questions, you can feel free to leave them in the comment section below, and I'll get to them within the week. That'll be all.